Let's maybe just quickly start with introducing ourselves, name, and just quick, what your main job description is right now, or what it was. Let's do your main job description before COVID. So, Jason Klobnak, you're in my top left-hand corner, so let's start with you.
Hi, I'm Jason Klobnak, trumpet player from Denver, Colorado, college educator, freelance player, jazz commercial music.
Excellent. Monica, you're up.
Hey everyone, my name's Monica Benson. I am a freelance trumpet player and music educator in Chicago. That was pre-COVID, and now during COVID, I just started a new job working for the Fulcrum Point New Music Project, so I'm their general manager.
Very cool. And Fulcrum Point, is that a local group? Isn't that with I've got a couple friends in there, but cool. I didn't realize that was a new job title for you.
Yeah, I just started that like maybe about a month ago. So
Nice.
Stephen Burns is the artistic director there. So that's another trumpet guy.
Very cool. Chris O'Hara, you're next.
Hi, my name is Chris O'Hara. I'm the founder and trumpet player for the Alliance Brass and Illumin Trio, and I'm the trumpet professor at Elmhurst University.
And Kurt Garrison, who shares the Elmhurst community or the Elmhurst University College connection. You're up.
Yes, so I'm doing, I'm a freelance player, arranger, orchestrator, music educator, studio, trying to keep as many things going as possible, and then touring as well. So trying to stay home once in a while. Now I'm staying home a lot. So.
All right, Buddy, you're up.
Hey, I'm Buddy Deschler. I'm one of the trumpet players in the Dallas Brass and a touring clinician and performer. Also doing the entrepreneurial student lecture, and I'm the co-founder and artistic director of two summer music festivals, the Fredericksburg Brass Institute and Tidewater Brass Institute.
Cool. And Melvin.
My name is Melvin Jones. I am a professional trumpet player, educator, currently trumpet professor at Morehouse College, as well as traveling clinician, formerly touring artist. Now I've become much more of a studio artist than I was before, mostly out of the home studio, doing a lot of TV programs, commercials, and of course, records, and yeah, life.
All right, Ryan Barrett.
Hello, I'm Ryan Barrett from the Chicago area of Naperville. I'm one of the founders of Pipe and Bell, which is a new music organ and trumpet ensemble. And then I also teach a lot. So
cool. And Jay Jennings.
Hello. I live in Los Angeles, California, and I am a touring trumpet player. I tour with Snarky Puppy, and I also tour with the country artist Toby Keith. And then I also have my own quartet that was scheduled to tour pre-COVID, but was postponed. And I'm also an educator, travel across the globe teaching at universities and high schools. And I also teach privately here at home. And I record from this room a lot at home on other people's projects and my own personal projects. So that's me.
And Kate.
Hi everyone, my name is Kate Amrine. I am a trumpet player and educator based in New York City. As a freelancer, I do a wide variety of things, but I especially love playing on Broadway and playing in new music projects as a soloist, and then also in my duo, Spark Duo, with my partner. In COVID times, I've been also sitting here, practicing a lot and recording, but I recently started a new organization called Brass Out Loud, which I might talk about later, but it is a virtual brass seminar, and we are looking for registrants. So please check us out online if you're interested in something to do in early January.
Cool. And Kevin.
Hi, my name is Kevin Woods. I'm a trumpet player based out of Philly, residing now in Delaware. I do mostly studio playing, studio sessions. I'm a part of a horn section, bop horns, and also a horn section, brass entity horns. New to touring, haven't really got my feet wet in it, but was starting right before COVID. So um, this has been different as well. But I'm glad to be home and glad to be in this very room recording on a lot of records and stuff like that as well.
And Farnell, last but not least.
Hey, Farnell Newton here, trumpeter, wearer of many hats. Before COVID, I was A&R at Marmoset Music. Now I'm in marketing coordinator at Marmoset Music, and I'm also the creator of Jam of the Week, social media community of jazz players and music lovers.
Right. And my name is Mary Galimi. I'm your host for today. I work for Denis Wick Products, USA. The importer of the products of Denis Wick Products North America is Danzer Inc. So that's the company I work for, but I handle all things Denis Wick. And I have the great pleasure of working with all these great artists. So the subject of today is really kind of how our jobs and our careers and our lives have been turned upside down in the last 9 months. Some of us more than others, for better or for worse, a lot of things have changed. And as we were talking about this in our planning discussion, I was thinking our lives haven't changed a lot. We've just kind of transposed into something else. It's a different key, a different tune that we've kind of had to learn. And so that's what we're talking about, how our lives, how our careers have transposed or been transposed from then, what we were doing before until now. You've met all of our Denis Wick artists, and I think we're going to start with the then to keep in order. So I think one of the biggest industries that got affected was the touring industry. So why don't we start with Jay and Buddy? I know both of you did a lot of touring, and I guess Chris for that matter too. And I know Chris and I used to tour together with Alliance Press. So, but what was life like on the road for you before everything got turned upside down?
I can start a little bit with that. I loved touring. I loved the touring life. I felt like anywhere could be fun for 24 hours. So like all these towns, all of these cities, places to eat. So when you're traveling a lot, there's things that you need to like be planned for and organized with, but at the same time, there's not really as much care or concern. Like certain things like that are really dangerous now, like just going into any restaurant, just like getting on any plane, getting in any car, like talking to all these people. And now with different places being like more hotspots than others and everything like that, it didn't really matter like where we were going. But like now you think like, oh, we're going to this very populated city or we're going here and there. So like I just didn't think about any of those things ever. I thought all those things were exciting, and now they're like really things to consider. And with Dallas Brass, not just with like the travel restrictions and safety being an issue, but so much of what we do is going into schools. And schools are like the worst place to be going in if they're even doing some like in-person stuff. So the idea of us coming into a high school or middle school or even a university, but like let's say a high school, and you do a clinic and you try to get the hundreds of band kids and music students together, and then you're like working with them and like you're up close and you're playing, and then we even include them in our show. So then it's like, let's get hundreds of kids on the same stage very close to each other to do this concert together. And then to have a group in, it's like, well, you can sell tickets to your concerts. And then it's like, well, now we can't fill the hall, maybe 25% if that, or something like that, and like 6 feet apart. So much of like what we were doing as a touring model is just not possible right now. So it was a lot of fun traveling, a lot of fun meeting a lot of people in a lot of different places. So that was the then. That was sort of my take on touring. But I know Jay and Chris also do a lot of touring stuff too.
Yes. Touring pre-COVID was basically my main income. Between the Snarky Puppy dates and the Toby Keith dates, that kept me pretty busy for about as much of the year as I wanted to be out. There's a couple of interesting things that have happened in my life since COVID actually happened. like the day that COVID happened, I got married, which was, amazing and a nightmare at the same time. Excuse me, from having, you know, no idea really what the virus was at the time. And it was literally like the world shut down the next day. We got married on March 14th in Texas. And then the next day it was like, nobody go anywhere. So our honeymoon was, 5 weeks at my in-laws' house. Pretty incredible. So, getting married at the beginning of COVID, it was like, okay, you guys ready to get married? How about spending 24 hours a day for the rest of your life together? Yeah. without any travel, without it was a learning experience, but everybody was learning. So it's not really like a special scenario in my eyes. It was just kind of like what was happening in my life. I started teaching a lot since COVID. I didn't teach that much before COVID, but I wanted to stay as active as possible. So I think one of the things that changed for me most from then to now is my practice routine, just as from coming from a trumpet and gear standpoint, which I never really talk about, honestly. But I'm I'm just now at 36 learning how to play the trumpet. I feel like for the first however long I've been playing, I had a hernia operation a couple of months ago, so I had to take some time off the horn for the first time in years. And doing that, I'm learning all of this new stuff that I've overlooked over the years as a young person that thought I didn't have time for it because I was just young and dumb. Quite frankly, that's all it is. It's just like my mind was elsewhere. My mind was in the music, or, I feel like so much of my trumpet playing suffers because of how much of my brain is used for the other stuff that it gets lost in. Like if I'm improvising, I feel like I'm technically maybe the worst trumpet player out there. Like when I'm improvising and I'm in my own headspace, it's just like I'm probably doing so much wrong because I'm not thinking about any of it. But I'm kind of realizing since the pandemic and the surgery and everything that all these technical exercises are helping me get to that headspace that I want to get to while doing the correct things naturally. So it's really just about my practice game has changed a lot since the pandemic has started. So
for those of our, I didn't, well, I wanted you to keep on going, Jay, but I have a question actually, and for all of you who are touring, for those of you who are attendees and don't really understand the life of a touring, we hear you guys on stage and you sound like you can do everything. I remember seeing Farnell Newton playing with Jill Scott, and I knew the song that they were performing was like one of my favorites. And it's this massive trumpet part that I thought was like 3 trumpets, and he's standing here on stage having to play it all by himself. And so like you guys sound like, you can do anything and everything on stage, but the reality, like Jay is pointing out, you don't have time to practice. You don't have time to really get in your headspace. So, how long are these touring stints? What are you able to accomplish while you're on tour?
Well, I feel like part of the reason why I didn't take advantage of the practice time as much being on the road was because it took a lot out of me just to get through the show. Hour and a half, 2.5 hour show. If I practice a lot during that day, I'm not going to have much gas halfway through the show. So, I feel like, they call it road chops or whatever, but if you're playing every night, I feel like you can get away with a lot more than if you're not. Now, it being in a pandemic, you kind of have to really focus on practicing every day because you don't have to. Ain't nobody calling you for a gig. Ain't got no place to go to. So if they do call you for a gig and you haven't played the trumpet for 2 weeks, you're going to be in some, you're going to be in a bad place, and you don't want that. So I'm having to like really focus. It's like, yo, okay, you took 6 weeks off the horn for this surgery. You got to play the trumpet every day. I did a live stream concert like last week, and I was really focusing just on playing the trumpet every day. And if you don't really think about it, there's about 3 things you do every day naturally. Everything else, hard to do anything every single day. So as a trumpet player, we kind of owe that to the instrument because we were dumb enough to choose this thing.
Yeah. Well, you definitely get used to it. Like what Jay's saying, it's like, like these road chops and like, how to get through a show no matter what. And you kind of like, you're like, how do you feel? Like, oh, not great, but you'll still do the show at like the same level. It's kind of like really knowing your car and someone's like, your gas light's on. You're like, oh no, it's fine. Like you're like, cause how much longer that you have, like, know how much longer you're going to last
until you don't. And then you get a hernia,
right?
Because you're doing the wrong stuff. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
you got to practice right. That's what we're saying.
For sure. So
I feel like a lot of good morals for trumpet players probably end in hernias. Like,
it's like, it's,
or start there.
Humans are so dumb. We don't learn until something really terrible happens to us. And then we're like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess I'll do it. It's just how everything works with the human race. I don't understand. We're just stupid.
Yeah. And also, like, I'm not trying to use this as an opportunity to brag, but I haven't hit 30 yet. So like, there's like that thing where like, you just assume like, you're like, oh, I can definitely do this. Like, I can definitely like do it until what Jay's saying is like, it's all fun and games until it's not.
Yeah. Listen, I don't feel old, but something happens at 35, bro. I'm just letting you know. I don't feel old.
I'm going to agree with Jay there. Like, you think something happens at, 30, and then you're like, oh God, I think I'm getting older. And then something happens at 35 and you're like, oh God, I think I'm getting older. And now I've hit 40. Your chops change, subtle. It's not, it's not huge, but anyway, I digress. I want to jump into freelancing because that's another huge part of our careers that have been affected by COVID. So, what were your main concerns as freelancers? And as I'm looking at the group, I think we've all done some freelancing. So, let's open this up to the group. What were your main concerns before COVID as a freelancer?
Well, as a father of three, I have to say that every single month that you've decided to take on this particular career, to become a self-employed entrepreneur who is also an employee of yourself because you're the business as well, the thing that was always a concern for me is just the hills and valleys of the career. You'll have this moment where everything is great, making more money than you've ever seen in your life. And then you'll have those valleys where it seems like you've never worked ever in your life. And being able to find that medium of what to do with the money once you have it, so that it can sustain you over the periods of time when you may not be making as much. The concern became much realer for me once we had our third child, because I was in between tours at the time. And I guess for those that don't know, I was a band director for about 6 years. That's one of the most stressful, but also one of the most stable positions I think I've had in my career. But during that time, I left that position to begin touring first with Tyler Perry. Then it went on with Young Jeezy. That's such a, such a switch around, but whatever the case, once the touring life started and I realized the difference between having a steady paycheck and regular insurance to having an unsteady paycheck and still needing the insurance, and plus feeding a family of 5, but when that became a thing for me, what I had to learn how to do was to wear multiple hats. As a freelance trumpeter, you're not just a trumpet player. You have to take on other decisions if you're going to decide to be a musician, because the word musician itself is such an umbrella term that covers so many different areas. I think for me, I had to come to grips with the fact that there's no one thing that can cover everything that we needed to do. But I guess if I were single and I had, no commitments whatsoever, then that life would be perfectly fine. I could live without a bank account, put everything in a jar, life would be fantastic. But the second responsibilities became a part of it. That's when I had to realize that strategy was more important than anything else. Whereas, ordinarily, if you don't have any responsibilities, you do a gig and get paid like $500 for the gig, you're thinking, okay, I have $500. But when you have responsibilities, you do a gig and you get paid $500, it's like, okay, I have a car note and a couple meals this week. Now what am I going to do for next week? So that becomes the idea of really becoming more responsible with the resources and kind of planning ahead with the things that you're doing.
Yeah, most definitely. I think the most important thing for me, I've been at this for quite a while, because now I just realized that Buddy is 1/2 my age. Thank you, Buddy. I just got an email from some friends of mine. We just celebrated 30 years since my deployment to the Middle East. They just sent out a video of the group that I went to the Middle East with. So you weren't even born yet, and I was in the Middle East fighting the war.
Thank you.
But you young people. Anyway, having several income streams, and I think every single person that I see on the screen here, you're all pretty darn smart, because what we've done is we've taken what's been thrown at us. But as a freelancer, my thing is to make sure that I have several streams of income, and COVID removed some of those streams of income. So I put a few more of my eggs in the basket. On the education side, for example, I'm part-time at 2 universities. I took on more private students. I had some good writing projects that came to fruition right at the beginning, and the people that I was writing the orchestrations for, they were able to pay me for those. So I still had some cash coming in from that. But what we were doing, because I am at that age where I'm trying to kick as much money into my retirement as I can, that's what I was doing. And, thinking long term, because, when you're 60, you start really looking at that stuff. When you're 25, 30, 35, 40, you don't really look at it that close. And then you go, man, Medicare is right around the corner, retirement. And, how long is my body going to keep up? And, that's the other thing with us all sitting around at desks a lot, making sure that for your mental health, getting some exercise, doing those things. My thing is every morning that I go out and run 3 miles. And it's such great therapy. So just get some physical activity for everybody who needs to do that. But having those several income streams and being able to adjust, and Melvin talked about, your peaks and valleys in your income. They're definitely there. And so if you plan for it, that's right. Put some money in the bank, and we were fine for a while. We're still fine, but you got to make sure that you plan those things like that. And then I tour, but not as much as extensively as Jay and some of you other folks. I do about 30 to 50 dates a year with Gary Sinise and the Lieutenant Dan Band, and we do stuff all over the place, all over the world. But we're usually out weekends, or we'll go out, 8 to 10 days at a time. We don't do 40, 50 weeks. The Tower of Power horn section, I think those guys have been on the road since they were born. I think they're out 50 weeks a year or something like that. But that's the thing, is just making sure that we maintain several streams of income. That's what's I think saved our lives here at my house anyway.
Yeah, I think the streams of income is huge, especially with the COVID and everything hitting. And like Melvin said, like, I'm a new father. My daughter was born January 7th. So like I had a screaming 3-month-old baby as soon as COVID started. And my partner, Arnetta Johnson, we brainstormed. We're like, hey, how can we try to do that exactly? How can we have another stream of income? I mean, we do a lot of studio work. We're having people call us, but people aren't in studios because studios aren't open. So we started this thing when COVID first started. It was called "We're Here to Record for What You Can Afford," and we basically set up just like this a Zoom where I would play and she would play it. We would go through tracks and hey, send us a track, and we'll be live on Facebook, and we'll record the track live on Facebook. And we did this for about maybe 2-3 months when COVID first happened, and we got a lot of records done. And it wasn't because of the money. It was just like, hey, this is another stream of income for money coming in for the session. But it was more for the fun and people just looking at the process of the home studio. Because to be honest, I think even when COVID's over, this is going to be, artists are not going to have to pay millions of dollars to have people go to a studio session. Hey, I can have it done in an hour. I can have it done in 2 hours, and send me the track. I'll bounce it down. And you can also, some of the work I've done recently, I've also put in engineer credits in, because I'm like, hey, I engineered the horns. I mixed the horns. I sent you a WAV file with all my horns on it. So then it's just finding different ways to have different streams of income as well.
I think with freelancing too, to tie into what Jay and Buddy and Chris were talking about with road chops, freelancers have to have in-town road chops, because you could have a jazz date Thursday night, a 4-hour cover band Friday night, a wedding Saturday, a bar mitzvah Sunday. So you've got all of these random things coming at you throughout the week that your chops are constantly in motion. And now we're in a state of, do I practice Hava Nagila? Because when this is done, I'm probably going to have to play that again. Am I going to play another version of Uptown Funk? Absolutely. That's going to happen. And is somebody going to call an obscure standard at a jazz club? Yes, that will happen. But we don't have that regularity of the freelance scene, which is really similar to what the touring guys were doing.
I love that, Jason. All of those things are totally things that I've encountered and also have struggled with. That was definitely my life before all of this happened. It was running around New York, doing so many different things in a different night, and especially, commuting on the train to all these different neighborhoods and figuring out what I needed. I was often out of the house for like 12 hours a day. And so when all of this shut down, I've never spent, I'm sure all of us are in the same boat, I've never spent this much time at home, and you start to go a little crazy. And so it obviously has been nice to delve into all of this practicing, but to really spend time and figure out like what gear do I want for all of this stuff, and like what mouthpiece is really going to help me like sound great on this pick solo and like on this lead stuff. And so it's been nice to have that time to sort of sit and figure out like, okay, what's going to really help me do this stuff well, because as a freelancer, I feel like I was just sort of hanging on in some ways, and I hadn't really had time to invest in finding not just the right equipment, but like the right, practice schedule, the right thing that worked for me that would help me do all of those things so easily. Of course, like, I've been in New York for 10 years now, so like, hopefully I'm not that bad at playing, but, like we all needed a little kick in the butt for practicing. And so that has been nice.
I think the biggest, transition for me was trying to reconfigure those income streams, because depending on the time of year, you can depend on a certain income stream. And if that was based on live performance, like May to September, my large chunk of income is from performing. And so that was gone. So I have a smaller studio. It's also the summer. So like less kids take lessons, which isn't that big of a deal because I have that performance income coming in. So it was like, oh, the summer hit this year and I still have that small number of students and no performing income. So I'm like, okay, cool. And I had just bought maybe weeks before COVID hit, I had just bought a brand new horn because I was like, I got on this union musical and it was supposed to run through the end of the year. And I was like, awesome, I'm going to pay this off in a month. And that just didn't happen. And so now I still have this beautiful, awesome new horn, but no way to pay for it. So that was a whole thing. So I had to really quick build my studio and just kind of start asking people. And I was able to do it. And then I started a new job later. But yeah, I mean, I have students now that I haven't even heard play in person, which is really tough because they're high school kids. It's not like they're college kids where they're a little bit more established and you can kind of piece together what their sound is, and they have the recording thing down a little bit more, so you can get a better picture of their sound. It's like young kids, like I have some 6th graders and I'm like, this is really hard for me not having heard you before. So that, I think that was the biggest thing, was kind of reconfiguring those income streams and saying like, oh, instead of having a large amount of students during the school year and then a smaller studio and relying on this other income to kind of buoy that up, now it's like, oh, you just have to have a lot of students all the time and then whatever else you're doing.
And that brings up an interesting point, because what if you don't like teaching? Like when I left college, I started private teaching, and I have to say I did not have patience for it. I was a lot of beginner and intermediate students to start, and it was not a great experience for me. So I stopped teaching, and I was auditioning and freelancing, and just there's a lot of things I didn't like that were going on. So I kind of shifted over into sales and marketing side. So, and we talked a lot about if you're not, if you need extra lines of income, you're teaching. But I know specifically Ryan and Farnell, like you guys are both more into marketing, and you've done the marketing, you've done the sales. Ryan's done some pretty unique things, but why don't you guys tell us a little bit more about what you do outside of just playing the trumpet as extra streams of income? And I'm saying this because I know when I was in school, I was told that if you tried doing anything outside of trumpet or teaching, that you just wouldn't make it. And you two are two of the finest trumpet players I know. So it's definitely possible. And how is that working for you guys?
For me, I mean, 5 beautiful kids, and also are tied up into these social media groups and social networks because I felt like when COVID hit, it just gave me more of a reason to really like create and nurture and mentor and try to help my digital community as well, because I'm all about community and networking. And I mean, and it just really taught me to fine tune my skills as far as how to market myself as a musician. How can I, there's my crazy dog in the background. How can I just market my music better, get my name out there more, and really be the go-to for social media, jazz, trumpet, and so on. And I really like sit back and there's a lot of great musicians who I love and admired and I've been a fan of since I was a kid. And they're hitting me up like, hey man, I need some help. I'm trying to, you know, get more traction on my social media. Or, hey man, how did you get that many spins on Spotify? Or how did you get that many sales on digital sales and things like that? So, you know, it validates what I'm doing and trying to do, because nowadays you have to wear all of these hats, and it's hard because you want to be just a creative, but you also got to remember, if you put it on music, it doesn't matter if no one's listening to it. So how do you get people to listen to it? How do you get people to buy your study book? How do you get people to use you as a horn section composer, arranger? And all of that stuff deals with marketing, community, and networking.
And you're a coffee roaster.
Yeah,
Kind
well,
of
like I'm a side hustle king. Like I'm the king of
side. That's what I'm talking about.
But also, you know what? I'm one of those. I'm a doer. I don't know if it's because of my zodiac sign, or fire sign of Aries, or it's just that like I'm that type of person. I'm like, if I want to learn how to do something, I've never been the type of person to let someone say, hey, you shouldn't do that. Because if you don't do that, then how do you know what you're going to enjoy and love? And I've done everything from jewelry making to having, you know, Grammy-winning artists wearing my jewelry and things. I roasted coffee for a while, which I love because I'm all about coffee. If you follow me on social media, you definitely notice. So I started a coffee company called Kinda Brew that literally started at the end of 2019 and kind of stopped right around COVID. You know, like I said, I've always worked in music and music licensing. I do a lot of licensing for commercials, on TV and on social media. And I mean, I kind of do any and everything that I can, you know. Like I said, I'm a side hustle king.
And Ryan, what's the side hustle for you?
The side hustle is real. I totally agree. For me, I mean, besides like teaching, 20 kids a week or 20 hours a week and performing, then I also have a real estate license, which I got, I don't know, April of 2019. So that was just interesting because like you have to go to school again to like take a huge test that has nothing to do with music. So it was like studying on a totally different level than I was used to. It's not like cramming for a concert. And then also like I have an interesting family situation where my wife and I, when we had our first son, her parents were retiring, and so we basically bought a house together out in Naperville in the suburbs. And they were kind of retiring, going to help us with the kids because I was not home much teaching and performing so much. So it was like free childcare at the time. But then she had this dream of starting a bakery. And like I was the only person living in Illinois at the time because everyone's still out of state from Michigan. And so I ended up opening the business with her. And I was like, oh, I'll do your marketing. I'll build you a website and like make some business cards. And now it has turned into a full-fledged bakery, like out of our house. Like I seriously almost had my apron on right now because it's the holiday season when I went for the Zoom. I'm not even joking. Like I walked down and like covered in flour because I was seriously like rolling out cookies. like up until the minute I was on this call. So yeah, the side hustle, like it's all about advertising, and it doesn't matter what you do. Like you just have to make it look good and have to make it look appealing. And it's all about the hype. And you can apply this to like every single piece of music or any adventure that you're doing, because if you can't create any hype about what you're doing, no one cares. And that's what Pharrell was saying just earlier. Just like you need to create that interest where if it doesn't exist, like it doesn't matter if no one's listening to your stuff, how great your stuff is, because no one's gonna know. So yeah, the side hustle, it's helped. When like all the gigs like dropped off, it's like, well, I redid a web page and then like put a lot more attention in the bakery, and now it's like, what was I thinking? As gigs are starting to come back, and December used to be like just try to keep your head out of water for the freelancer. Like just you were practicing for the next gig, never like, what, I'm gonna play with drones today. You just didn't have time for that. Like there was zero chance. So now it's like, I don't think I've practiced this consistently with nothing like practicing for maybe since like before grad school, where like you didn't have gigs, and so it was just kind of like getting back into that routine and like looking at all the rep that you used to wish you had time for, and stuff like that. So trying to keep motivated, like Jay was saying too, is just like, okay, this is my job, and I have 2 little boys, so like scheduling in like, okay, I'm practicing from like 8 until 10, and so like just making that and like get it out of the way, or what Kirk was saying too, just
that's
like
a long time, bro. That's a long time. 8 to 10, that's a long time.
One of the things that I'm kind of loving, and just hearing everyone talk about all this stuff is like how, we all talk about diversifying your streams of income and all that, and that's great. But in order to do that, you have to have the skills in those various areas. And I've been saying this for years. If you want to really own your product, you got to do everything from beginning to end. And I've always been a big fan of this idea. So everything that Alliance or Illumin or any of the projects that I've ever been a part of does, like I make the arrangements, I do the recording, I do the engineering, I do the graphics for it. And if you learn how to do all of this stuff, not only do you save yourself tons of money that you would have to pay somebody else to do it, but then when stuff like this hits, you still have those sources of income. Because I have arrangements for sale, like my arrangements are still selling, so that's awesome. We have albums out, and people are still buying those. And because I had taken the time years ago to learn how to do the recording, and everyone here is doing this, and it's fantastic, and everyone has to now for just to survive. But because I had that information, like when all this hit, I've been collecting mics over the years. Everyone in Alliance took a set of gear. They had their digital audio inputs, and they had their mics, and they had their mic stand that were part of the collection. And so we're still able to record. We're still able to put out product. For Christmas, we just we recorded from all over the country, wherever everybody is. We recorded our parts, we layered them, we edited it and sent it out. Customers happy, and we're still able to perform. And this is the perfect perfect storm for people who have really diversified themselves to really succeed. And just seeing what everyone's doing I love it.
We also talked about this in our planning session, but it's also a great time to learn all of those things. We talked about how, we've all been doing some recording from home, but I know, at least with myself, I was working on a 10-year-old computer back in March, and I had no idea how to record myself or how to edit. I didn't own a microphone. And so obviously I got that stuff together really quick, because there were so many projects, that I was getting paid to do, that I had to turn out something that was really high quality. And of course, now I have multiple mics and an interface and a MacBook, and everything is a lot easier because I know so much more. But using this time to build those skills now, especially if you're in school, is really, really great, because these are things that, you're going to have forever. And even if things come back, hopefully when things come back in person, having these skills that you're going to be able to record yourself from home and, churn out these personal projects is going to be really, really great.
The whole idea of what Kate was saying about like while you're in school, like kind of taking initiative to like develop these skills now, and what everyone else was talking about with this portfolio revenue stream and like diversifying your skill set. Coming back to the idea of when you're a student, having those not just skills, but like being known for that, like while you're in school. So that way, when you leave school, you're not just another person that's like, I have my trumpet and a degree from this place. But it's like, not only am I a arranger, but here are my arrangements. Not only am I a composer, here are my compositions. Not only am I a recording artist, here is what I've recorded, here's what I've mastered, here's what I've done that. So that way, when you leave school, or in our case, when we are like limited on our normal like musical lives, not touring, not traveling, not recording in person and stuff, we have these other things, not just that we can do, but that we're known for doing. So it's kind of like, I don't know what's going to happen, but I need coffee. I'm going to call Farnell. So like, I'm going to have to get, like a lot of these other skills enhanced, but also build the hype for them and be known for them. So that way, when we can't do A, B, and C, we still have D, E, F through Z.
I'm going to put a quick plug in there that, if you're curious about how to do something, or you've got questions about how to get better at a certain part of your career or your performance, download the Denis Wick app. There's lots of information on there in clinics. But with that, we brought it up a couple times with product that, we haven't had the time to practice before COVID, but now we're practicing a lot more in a lot of variety of ways. And I feel like it's come up a couple times that, I've had some of you had more time to actually delve into your product side of things, because unfortunately, the reality of a lot of our performance careers is a lot of negotiating the product we're playing on. Like, oh, this is not ideal, but I'm just gonna have to get through it because I got to play this and this and this next. You just don't have the time to focus in on making something better. And there's a lot of fear surrounding that too, because trying out product can damage you if you do it wrongly. And there's information on how to do it the right way in the Denis Wick app. But for those of you in this COVID-19 break who got a little more time to look into some new product, or really pay attention to what you've been playing and how you've been doing things, what are some things that have changed for you product-wise that when you go back to playing regularly, you feel like you're in a better position now?
Ooh, I have a couple, if that's okay. I talked about this during the planning session, but I used to play on a very large what I consider a large mouthpiece. It was a 1.5 C ish, but it was also like a deep V Flumpet cup. Like I didn't know what I was doing for years. I was playing pop gigs with this thing, trying to have that golden tone like an idiot. But it took me a while to sacrifice the tone for something a little bit smaller. But even then, it was too big still, because my face had adjusted to those big mouthpieces. So, and I was playing these gigs that I had no business playing on those mouthpieces, but I didn't know any better, I guess. So I was doing it, but I have since learned that, there's you just got to practice on what you're going to play on, and you can create the tone that you want. Now I play on a 3C for pretty much everything. It's the Maurice Murphy 3C, which I believe is slightly bigger in rim size, maybe.
It'll feel a little bigger than a Bach 3C.
Okay, yeah,
but not substantially bigger. They're relative.
Right. So I wanted to just express that I'm excited to play some of the gigs that I used to play on these big idiotic mouthpieces. I'm excited to go back and play them with something more reasonable, like the 3C that I have on my trumpet right now, or I don't know. These heritage mouthpieces seem to be all the craze. I tried one at NAMM. I loved it. But yeah, I don't know. I've just, to be honest, been focused so much on fundamentals that a 3C feels pretty effing nice right now, because it's just kind of right in the middle. And, I am a firm believer, though, that if you practice the right way, on the mouthpiece that you really like, I think you can make it work for you. I was just practicing and playing the wrong way on those big mouthpieces for years. Not that I didn't, that I couldn't like produce a good sound and like play up, like but I always had a cap for years. I had a cap. I would chop out for years, chop out every night. Not that I couldn't play anymore, but it's, how you sound and how you feel when you sound is a totally different thing. Because I always say, like, if it feels bad for me, I think I assume that it sounds bad. It's not always the case. You have to realize that people listening to you aren't feeling what you're feeling while you're playing the trumpet. So what they're hearing is probably genuine.
Yeah. Well, I feel like, coming out of the jazz school of thought and jazz schools, like I was the same way. I always played on bigger mouthpieces, one and such, because my sound, because I was all about the sound. It was like, I didn't really care if I was playing the most killing lines or anything. It was like, if from my first note to my last note, you would be like, wow, that was a great sound. But then when I started to hit the road touring, and you're rehearsing literally 8 to 10 hours a day, and then you're on a tour bus and you have to get up to do a sound check that might last 5 minutes. And then you got to play, you don't play for 4 hours, and then you got an hour and a half show. And then, so it's just like, I was talking to my good friend, Phil Lassiter, and we was just talking about like, hey, sometimes playing those bigger mouthpieces for 8 to 10, 12 hours is kind of too much to be able to not wear yourself out, because you're going for sound when you need to be able to, yes, have sound, but you need to be able to have good endurance and such. So I definitely had to change mouthpieces. But the great thing about Denis Wick, when I first tried Denis Wick in 2009, I got 5 mouthpieces in the mail, and I was like, what am I going to do? I don't know these numbers. What are these? These numbers are different than a Bach number or a Monet number or whatever. And I remember talking to Steve at the time that was at Danzer, and he said, just try them all, and whichever one allows you to do everything you need to do, don't think about the numbers. Just play them. Whatever allows you to do what you trying to do and everything correctly and right, then that's the one you should choose. And ever since that day, I've kind of thrown numbers out of the window for the most part.
I've noticed.
I'll jump in. Oh, yeah. Sorry, I was just jumping on you there, buddy. Go ahead.
No, please, you. I need more Chris O'Hara in my life.
I was the exact same thing. Like for me on the classical side of things, I used to play on a Monet like 1-1, this bathtub of a mouthpiece. I played brass quintet shows on that and did that for years. And then when I started playing Denis Wick, I did that. I jumped for the biggest mouthpiece that they had because that's what I was used to doing. And it wasn't working. And so I started playing other stuff, toss out the numbers, exactly what Farnell was saying. And I ended up playing just like Jay, I'm playing the Maurice Murphy 3C. And man, that thing saves my life, man. It makes my life a whole lot easier. Playing a 2-hour brass quintet show's not a problem anymore. Like I don't have to work for it. It's finding the right stuff. And just because so and so plays this mouthpiece doesn't mean that you need to find the thing that works for you, because nobody cares what you play. That doesn't matter. What matters is what you're able to do with it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that doing mostly classical and commercial stuff, I've kind of just been like, I'll just put in my 1.5C American Classic into whatever. But with doing more recordings stuff lately, like you're really starting to hear like, oh, that's what I sound like with everybody else. That what's not gonna fit. Like that is not gonna fit here. So I was recording like some like Latin band pieces with like a 1.5C, and I was playing lead, and I was just like, it happens, but it doesn't fit here. So it's so cool like seeing this entire screen of people, because we have our classical and our chamber and our jazz and our commercial and our lead. And I remember when like trying to experiment a little bit, I was like, what does Kirk play? I want to see what Kirk plays, because Kirk is playing some of these notes and has this sound that I'm really curious about. And like everything that Denis Wick has, like there's so many options for so many players, because we're really getting the full spectrum of sound, of style, of genre, of trumpet.
Spill the beans, Kirk. Which one is it? What piece you got over there?
I'm using, for most of my playing, I'm using the MM4C. For most of my playing, I do use something else that will remain nameless on occasion when I have to do something stupid. But I'd say about 80 to 90% of my playing is on the MM4C. And I play on a Schilke B5 with no water key. You got to plan ahead sometimes. But I play on a Schilke B5, and yeah, if you got a couple quick bars to empty the thing, you might sound like the Navy submarine band if you don't get that water out of there real quickly. But and that mouthpiece has worked for me for a very, very long time. I think I still remember when Denis was here, when he had me trying the mouthpiece, and he goes, try the 4C, Kirk. And then I did. And then he kind of gave me a lesson, which was killer, to get a lesson from Denis Wick. You know, we were sitting in the studio there, and I changed, and there was no honeymoon period. It just worked great right away. And I haven't changed anything since. I don't remember what year, maybe 2008, somewhere in there.
You were here when, I think, before I was there. So yeah, 2008 sounds about right, because I think I was the end of 2007 that I joined Dancer. So no, it must have been before that then. But
and prior to that, I had played the same mouthpiece for 22 years. I played on a Giardinelli 7C, and it was very close to this. It was a great mouthpiece, very versatile. The rim was comfortable, and then I instantly changed to this. And like I said, I went. You know how you tell your students never to go to a gig with a brand new mouthpiece? I did that.
And Kirk's
I have one. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say Kirk's been abbreviating. MM is actually Morris Murphy 4C, which Morris Murphy series is very projecting, for those of you who haven't tried it. So it makes a great mouthpiece for lead players, commercial players, orchestral players who need to really cut through the orchestra.
And actually, you can play. I can play very pretty on it too. I mean, it's that versatile. You know, just a matter of rechanneling. You know what you're doing with your airstream, but I can make it sound, you know, like Miles or Chet Baker if I want to. I can make that pretty sound. Same exact equipment. It's very versatile.
For reference, I use that for my piccolo.
Ryan, what were you going to say?
Oh, well, talking about there's no honeymoon period. I was on a gig, a CPE Bach Magnificat with my piccolo with Mary, and she's like, I have this prototype, and we were like in the dress rehearsal.
You got to give some background. We were playing in a rehearsal room, and we were playing so quiet. It was awful, and we kept on getting the hand. And basically, I think the conductor was telling us to stop playing because we could breathe and it would be too loud. And so for Ryan, who's playing the top part, he had a couple notes that were pretty hard to come in that quietly.
There's a couple high G's in there. And so it's not easy playing on pianissimo. And she's like, well, here, I have this prototype, and it's like stamped prototype, and I have like the Heritage Cornet mouthpiece, so I've played on something like this before, but like the smallest mouthpiece up until this point I played is like a 3C, but normally I'm like 1 1/4. And so she hands it to me, and like she's like, well, you're not gonna like test it out right now or play it in the rehearsal. And I was like, well, like now is the time. And so like I just put it in, and I end up playing the whole concert. But the problem, and so I loved it. I fell in love. The problem though is that she needed it back. So I gave it back reluctantly because she's like, well, they're prototypes. Like I can't really have you, you know. I'm like, fine. So then the pandemic hits, and I get a call from the sister city in Italy that's recording all these Torelli in Italian concerti. Like they're a string ensemble, and they need a trumpet soloist with the sister city from Naperville. And I was like, I think I'm the only trumpet player in Naperville. I don't know. So it works. And so I'm like, Mary, do you remember that mouthpiece that you let me have? And so like she ends up sending me like 5, but I play the 5X, and it's the one that like finally it feels big, but it gets me that G and the A, which never used to exist on the piccolo. And so yeah, it's
do you
it's
have it
like
there with you?
yeah, it's very
Hold it up to your
zippy.
camera. I can tell you guys a little bit about this. So the Heritage series, there it is. It looks a little longer. You can see the rim is thinned out. It's not as thick as normal rim as you're looking at its profile. And that's kind of the secret. The mass of that mouthpiece is in the base of the cup. And then the upper walls and rim are thinned out. So you get like the focus of a heavy top, but because it's been thinned out in the walls and the rim, it's pretty lightweight and it zings. And that's specifically why I created it, because we created it as a company, because we needed something that, you know, when you need a zinger of a mouthpiece, you generally need something that a little bit lighter weight of a mouthpiece will definitely affect how that mouthpiece resonates. So we took the most popular sizings for orchestral players and commercial players that we thought this would work best for, and made duplicates of them, but in that Heritage style. So it's a little bit more lightweight, and it just, you lean into it and it zings. And as Ryan found out, it makes a great piccolo trumpet mouthpiece. And I hadn't thought about this before, but the piccolo trumpet itself isn't that heavy. It's a smaller instrument. So when you put a heavy trumpet shanked mouthpiece in it, that really doesn't necessarily complement the piccolo trumpet as well. So we're finding that the new Heritage really does complement the piccolo trumpet well. For those of you wondering, it's we should be getting our first shipment of them in January. So
yeah, I was really excited when I didn't get any calls like during the pandemic, but I literally got a call to do a live recording down in Orlando, and I was like 2 weeks. And I was like, I remember that mouthpiece that I played at NAMM, and I knew I was going to have like eight to 10 hour rehearsals a day for like the whole 2 weeks. So I called Mary as well. I'm like, hey, is there any way I can get that mouthpiece? And she sent it, and I was arguing with one of my other players that are in my section. They're like, yeah, you should not play this new mouthpiece during this. Like we got all this music to learn, and you should not do it. And I did it, and I loved it, and I loved the tone I got with it. And I'm playing actually the Heritage, I guess the Maurice Murphy 2C of that Heritage model. And I loved it. And again, I'm basically still in the honeymoon stages, because I didn't have to worry about breaking it in as you would normally for a normal mouthpiece. And I really do love it.
Quick side note, I love that, you know, you're on a call with a bunch of trumpet players when, as soon as Mary starts talking about like, well, in the rim and then the sides of the thing, everyone like goes and grabs their, like everyone's trying to look at their mouthpiece.
So I've been I think I've been pretty quiet on this particular topic because I started off in a much different place mouthpiece wise. And I grew up playing on and started playing trumpet with a flugelhorn mouthpiece without knowing that it was a flugelhorn mouthpiece. And so I didn't realize that until maybe 5 years into learning how to play the instrument in high school. And they had, it was the craziest thing. John Williams came by the school, and he was like a guest conductor that day. And we were playing Procession of the Nobles, the Rimsky-Korsakov piece. And it gets to that trumpet solo, bum, 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 bum. He used to stop the orchestra. And he looked at me and said, what are you playing on? And I pull up my trumpet with this really short, it was all the way down to the cup because it really wasn't made for that. And so it wasn't until that moment that I realized there even was a difference. So I don't know why he even had it with him, but he gave me a 3C mouthpiece. Up until then, I didn't know that there was a difference. And for me, it felt like he gave me a straw to play in when I was playing on this other thing. So it was a really strange transition. And then from there, by the time I got to college, and I went to an HBCU, to Morehouse College, the idea of trumpet playing in HBCUs is much different than in any other organization in general. You have to be able to scream, but you have to be able to scream louder than a tuba. And so the idea of doing that for 4 years, I ended up on a Marcinkiewicz 7E. That was another huge transition, this really tiny mouthpiece. Then when I got to graduate school to Rutgers and I started studying with William Fielder, with late William Fielder, the first thing he did for me in my very first lesson was take that mouthpiece away from me. And instead of giving me another mouthpiece, he gave me a brown paper sack full of underparts. And I still have it here. That was back in 2001. And what he gave me was a bunch of custom-made Bach underparts. Here's one of them. They were all variations of 1.5 Cs. And he said, you have to find a rim, something that fits you. He said, just go to Dillon's up there in Jersey, find yourself something that works. I went through the little bin, and all that I could find that actually fit on this turned out to be a Schilke 20. I didn't realize the difference from a Schilke 20 and a Marcinkiewicz. So I couldn't do anything on his mouthpiece for a good like year and a half. And the way Prof taught, you already were only going to be playing one note as it stood. I mean, I roomed with two other great trumpet players, with Lee Hogans and with Sean Jones. We were all living together, we were all in school together at the same time. And we would come back to the apartment for an entire academic year and ask each other, so you do anything different in your lesson today? Nope. All we did for an entire year of study was play concert F in the staff. And if your attack wasn't perfect, it made you put the horn up and take them to the grocery store. It was the weirdest kind of like teaching experience ever. But once I got used to it and I realized the difference, I must have played on this thing for about maybe 10, 15 years before I decided to try anything different. And the only reason I had to try something different is because the rim, the metal on the rim wore down to the point that I was, basically my lips were in contact with raw brass. So I was getting these weird breakouts. My lips would swell at random points and I couldn't figure out why. And as mentioned before, I could do everything that I needed. I built a career off of that mouthpiece. It wasn't until I had to explore other mouthpieces that I realized, maybe it didn't take as much work as you were putting in, or maybe you can actually adjust the sound and the sizzle of your sound to go to different situations. So by the time, funny enough, by the time I met you, Mary, I was on the road with one of your other shows, and you introduced me to the Denis Wick mouthpieces. And Farnell had told me about them for years, and I think he might have been the person that exchanged our information. But by the time I met you, I was playing on just on a regular 3C, and going between that and a regular 1.5C, not realizing that the piece I've been playing on forever, I think one point that hasn't been mentioned when I look around in some of the different pictures is the physiology that's necessary to play this really demanding instrument. My lips are much more supple. And so the kind of mouthpieces that I was playing on, I would have to cram a lot of this meat into the mouthpiece to try to get a sound without realizing that there was really a much more comfortable. That flugelhorn mouthpiece wasn't that far off from what I probably needed to be playing on. But by the time I met you, you introduced me to the Maurice Murphy 2C and a bunch of different variations of the sizes around it. And I played on that for a really long time until I realized, I wanted more sizzle necessarily in my lead playing, and I couldn't accomplish that with my particular, physiology. So this other unknown mouthpiece became kind of a go-to for my lead playing, whereas the Maurice Murphy 2, the gold one specifically, with this kind of softer metal, that became my go-to for pretty much everything else I did under the sun. Until last year when I encountered you on the road and you introduced me to the heritage piece. And so that's why I wanted to, go ahead and give it this little zinger. It's got a little dirt on it. You have to excuse that. But I think what I love about it, again, I needed a wider rim, and I feel like, but I also needed that cut. And I kind of feel like the heritage is the in between, where it gives me just enough cup and just enough coverage to feel like I'm still doing the same things. So that was my little shameless plug. I love the heritage series. Thank you for sending it to me. Good times.
Can you send me one?
Yes, I need to explain that the couple prototypes I had were I had been holding on to. They were supposed to kind of go out and get. I got them right before COVID. Again, another wrench that COVID threw in our plans. But I'd gotten a couple boxes of prototypes that I figured I'd start in different, the east, the west, the north, and the south, and kind of rotate them around and have artists send each other. But we can't send mouthpieces to each other because I'm pretty sure sharing a mouthpiece would be like a really prime way of catching COVID from somebody. So don't do it. So they kind of the prototypes that I had kind of went out when I got a Mayday call from somebody, or like someone who already emailed me 2 or 3 times to try it out. So yes, those are prototypes that a couple people got for a specific situation. But as soon as we get our first shipment, I'll be able to set you guys up, all of our artists with who want to try some out. So sorry for the delay, but I think everybody will really like these. So. We are just about out of time. One of the things that really came up a lot in our planning session, which we didn't quite hit on, was mental health. And the interesting twist of that discussion, which I thought we might want to close on, is, of course, when COVID hit, it was really a shock to our senses to not have all of our lines of revenue and performance and creativity kind of taken away from us momentarily. And then we had to figure out how to bring them back into our lives. And so I feel like we're all back on this plateau. We're like, all right, we've got things going on. We appreciate a lot of the things that we've learned during COVID-19. And for a lot of us, we saw our families in a new way. We saw our mental space in a new way. So I want to, for those of you that this resonates with, what is your impression of what your mental health was before COVID? What, in terms like, are there things that you really appreciate from your time of just being, being at home? And do you think it's possible to take that into the future that you have after we're all vaccinated and our jobs kind of return to normal?
I think the family dynamic has been great with COVID. With me being a new father, I think I would have never saw the beginning stages of my daughter doing everything because I would have been gigging or doing whatever I'm doing, traveling. So I think the best thing about that is just being home, and I don't want this to be taken for granted when we are back to normal. I want to make sure that I am still paying attention to my home. So I think that's one thing that a lesson learned during this whole situation.
Something I thought about when we were talking about doing this whole seminar. Um, I've seen a lot of trumpet players on some of the various websites. Yeah, well, I think I'm just going to quit playing trumpet, go do something else because I'm not making any money playing right now and all this stuff. And I started thinking about the timeline. How much time have we all spent learning how to do this and get good at this? And how long have we been not performing? And if you do the ratio, it's not that long that we can wait, and we can all weather this. And so I'm kind of trying to keep an optimistic approach to this, that in a few months hopefully we'll all be back. But the years and the hours and the thousands of hours that we've all spent learning to do this, I don't want to see people give this up, because it'll get better. And like I said, what has it been? How many months since March? And then, I've been playing for, well, longer than Buddy's been alive, at least. So, and it's probably some of you others too. But don't give that up. It's gonna get better, and it's gonna come back. And I think that little note of optimism is what's keeping me going, knowing that we'll be back there somewhat normal eventually.
Yeah, I'm sorry to jump on Melvin, I'm sorry. I was just going to say that for me, mentally, my mental health has definitely, it's been a struggle for this. I think, full disclosure, it's been a struggle. I've been more depressed than I think I ever have in my life, which is weird because the happiest I've ever been in my life. I just got married. I just got a dog, which is amazing. If you follow me on social media, you can't miss my new dog, Francis. He's goodest boy. Actually, he's baddest boy, but we're working on it. It's just, I think for me, I kind of had to realize that, no matter how alone I felt, to kind of, this virus levels the playing field so in such a gnarly way for everybody that it's like, well, I'm not alone here. I'm going to call somebody and talk to somebody about it. And I don't think it's, super important on who that is. It's somebody that you love and trust probably, but just to have someone to talk to. I'm talking to the people who are really out there living alone. I don't live alone. I live with my wife. So I don't really know what that's about during this time. But I know that some of my friends live alone, and I make it a point to check on them more than I ever have because of just the way I feel. And I'm like, well, geez, if I feel this way, like, what if somebody doesn't have a wife and a dog? What are they doing? So, like, I think it's important to check in with your people, as well as your family. And these family conversations that are coming up around Christmas time and COVID are tough, really tough. Yeah, it's looking like we're probably not going to go home for Christmas this year. It's going to be an LA Christmas for the first time. My wife and I are both from Texas, and we always go home for Christmas every year. It's a big deal, but this year, probably not. So, that on top of the 10 months that we've had, and let's not forget about all the racial injustice that we've seen publicly on TV and all the fake news and the election. Take your pick on what's on your mind. Just talk about it with somebody. And I think it's important to acknowledge that. And it's okay that you feel bad. It took me a while to figure that out too. It's totally okay to feel like this is not the most swinging time to be in America. You know what I mean? Like it's okay to accept that. So that's all.
And to kind of go along with that, just Kirk had said earlier, towards the beginning of this whole conversation, go outside, take a walk, get some fresh air, get some exercise, put on a mask when you do it though.
I think one of the benefits of this whole situation is, I think coming out of this, it will allow musicians to draw more firm boundaries with their time, which is something that's really hard for musicians. It's like you take everything that comes to you. Normally it's like, oh, you're paying me to play music, cool, yeah, sure, I'll drive an hour there and an hour back for $100 or whatever. And now I'm hoping that now that people are seeing, oh, there's so much that you can do online, it's like, oh, you want me to do that recording project, do you really need me to be in the studio to do that? I can do it from home. Let me send you some samples of what this is. Or even just with teaching too, it's like, that's something that I'm learning, is like, oh, I don't like teaching sixth graders. So maybe like once I'm a little bit more financially stable, I'm not going to teach any more sixth graders. That's just like a boundary that I don't want to deal with, because we're realizing like how important our mental health is and how taxing like our profession is. Like we love it, but it is really taxing. So now that we're getting a little bit of time to rest, I think we're seeing like, oh, these are the things that I just am not going to do anymore, because it's not worth it. It's not worth like my mental health. It's not worth this. But when you're in the middle of it, when you're in like the grind of everything, you're just like, I got to do this because I need money. I need this, blah, 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 whatever. And now we're finally getting to where we can see like, that's maybe not like a worth it venture for me, like mentally. So I think that's been one benefit of COVID for sure, is just kind of taking your career and your life and where you are.
Isn't that a great moment when, as a human, really, when someone calls you for something that you've done in the past, but you don't really want to do again, and then they ask you to do it, and you think about it, and you're like, nah. I think that's such a good moment in somebody's life, when you don't have to swallow that pill that you don't want to swallow anymore.
And that is a whole new discussion. I feel like that's a whole topic we could have at another time, like winnowing what you're going to keep.
No.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to say no.
Just say no.
One of my favorite phrases is, I would love to, but I'm sorry, I can't.
Yeah. Some of the things
for the record, I haven't said no to anything in a long time.
Where Monica got $100 for a gig.
I was gonna say maybe ask for 125 if it's an hour each way. See if that works.
Melvin, you had something earlier you were gonna say.
Yeah, I think I know that my answer can be kind of contrarian when it comes to this, but this is the most I've seen my kids in 10 years. So I missed the first 10 years of our 10-year-old's life, and she's done some really incredible things, especially throughout COVID. And I think now this has provided me an opportunity to not even consider it a game of focus as much as a game of priority, because I think in a lot of instances we do focus on the things that we lost, but I think this time has really given me the opportunity to appreciate the things that we already have here. Like, I didn't realize how amazing my kids. Everyone says my kids are amazing; they're the best in the world. My wife is great. They say this, but they don't really know what that means until you have no choice but to be with them forever. And so now I don't think you could hear my kids in the background, right? They're the loudest 3 children on the planet. And they have these singing voices. And instead of singing, they just yell all day, just, ah! And now they figured out harmony. So now they're doing that in harmony, just, ah, in chords. So the thing is, though, now that I get this time to spend this time with them, I've come to figure out, like, they're a lot like me. Or I'll look at it, they're a lot like my wife. or else it's like, you know, I didn't like this about myself. So I think the idea of mental health, I think it gets cast as kind of like another umbrella term. But I think there are so many things that encompasses in your life that you may not even realize is a part of your life. You know, a lot of times, you like my man said, like he was saying, you know, you could pick what's on your mind and talk about it. So many things going on right now. I think the automatic idea is to unplug, but I don't know that that's the healthiest thing to do either, because a lot of the things that affect you are still being handled and thought of by other people. But I do think it's important for you to put them into perspective. Like, this is a part, but maybe now this is number 10 in the line as opposed to number 1 in the line. And maybe my new number 1 is that thing that I was pushing down to number 5, or whatever the case, you know. And we talk about health. I think it's all just kind of all encompassing when you decide what is going to be your priority, because ultimately the time that I've spent with my little girls has been the thing that has motivated me to approach my other things better. So I just kind of feel like maybe the things that you haven't valued, or not even valued, just haven't shown the value. I think once you get that opportunity to really like self-examine, you'll find that the things that you may have not necessarily put on the back burner, but may have felt you were making sacrifices for, is worth those sacrifices. And it ultimately leads you. I don't want to say it's destiny, fate, religion, whatever it is, but I can say that throughout this pandemic, my calendar, and I can show you this, my calendar has been so crazy that I had to start writing it down and using Post-its again. Like the phone and the computer, that doesn't even do it for me anymore, because now that it's gotten so busy, I think it's happened because I put more focus on my family. And I just feel that if we're talking about mental health, you can never undervalue the things that were there before the trumpet. And so I kind of feel like once you involve those things, or re-involve those things, or re-engage those things, you'll find that enhances the trumpet and everything else in your career. And so that's my Zen moment for the day. Yeah.
Very cool.
Absolutely. And I think one of the cool experiences about this panel is that everybody's coming from different experiences. Pre-COVID, my schedule revolved around my family. My wife works a full-time corporate job, and being the freelancer, my freelance career, my teaching, everything revolved around the family. And certain gigs would not happen if there was no coverage for my 2 daughters. Now, thankfully, they're old enough that we can be like, hey, you're on your own. Well, a little bit, maybe not completely on your own, but one of the things that since COVID, you spend more time with your family, which is awesome. My 20-year anniversary is at the end of this month, which is incredible, because not a lot of people stay married that long anymore. But one of the things that I've really realized is how much I miss the people that I used to work with on a regular basis, because that was your family. So you have your nucleus family, the one that you're born into or the one that you're married into, but then you have your musician family. For me, this has been the time period of, man, I really miss my musician family. Even the people that it was like, yeah, I'm really not looking forward to playing with that person because I'm tired of their personality on the gig. They talk too much, they drink too much, they do whatever. Those are the exact people that I'm sitting on, what is today, a Thursday? So Thursday night, I'm going to be sitting at home going, man, I wonder what they're up to. And like Jay said, that's usually my reminder of a callback of, hey, we haven't talked in a while. What's going on? I can't wait to play with you again. And I'm looking forward to the day to where we can be in person with other musician family to play. And that's one of the things that I love about Denis Wick so much, is this is another form of family. And I'm going to miss Midwest and NAMM and all of the other in-person things that I can hang out with these amazing people.
Well, on that note, I think if we have any attendee questions, now would be the time to pass them through. We do have future trade shows coming up. NAMM, as Jason mentioned, in January, and TMEA in February. And I think we'll probably try doing another trumpet discussion for each of those trade shows. We'll probably focus on a specific subject, maybe saying no. But I really enjoyed having all of my artists together and being able to talk with you. And every single time we get together, it's just a really fun hang. And this is something I've always wanted to have other people to be a part of who don't normally get to see an artist group interact with each other. And also, you know, if you're interested in becoming a professional trumpet player, getting an artist affiliation with a manufacturer is pretty important. I mean, a lot of when you look at it as a student, you think, oh, great, they're gonna support me and advertise me and blah 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 blah. But really, I think a lot of what people grow to enjoy about being a Denis Wick artist is being part of this Denis Wick family and being part. You know, there's so much networking that happens within the group, and that's one of the most exciting things for me to watch and be a part of. So. So keep your eyes open for future trumpet artists gear and career talks. I'm not seeing any questions come through, so I think this is it for us. Until next time, thanks so much for coming and watching. Thanks to the artists for being here to provide all your wisdom. You can see more about us and what we're doing on the Denis Wick booth, which is booth.danzer.com, and as well as the Denis Wick app, which you can download from App Store and Google Play. I look forward to seeing you all again, and have a happy holidays and best of luck in everything that you're working on right now. Y'all later.
Thanks, Mary.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Good times.